What's up, guys? We got a fantasy football video today. We're going to be telling you the 10 biggest secrets that fantasy football experts are trying to hide from you. If you want to win your fantasy football league, subscribe down below. We got fantasy content coming out every single week, multiple times a week.
Yes, sir.
The first person that they're trying to hide from you is Jerick McKinnon. This guy's going as the RB39 with an ADP of 123.8. He's the primary receiving back in a Patrick Mahomes-led offense. And let's not forget, he finished as the second best running back last season from weeks 13 to 17. Now, I'm hearing all this Pacheco hype, and that's why Jerick McKinnon has fallen, but what's 3 games in the playoffs going to do? They have 2 completely different roles. Jerick McKinnon is the receiving back on this team. That role is not going to go away, no matter if Pacheco starts taking more of a lead role back. And he's the best blocking back on the field, which is going to get him on the field no matter what. You're going to see him down in third down and passing situations. Currently, I think he's the best running back in PPR formats late in drafts. You can get him in round 13, 14, and that's a guy who finishes the second best running back over the course of 5 weeks last season. That's a no-brainer draft in my eyes. No risk, all the reward you can get in the 14th round. Jerick McKinnon is a must draft and is one of the biggest secrets in this fantasy football season.
Wow, Trav, you almost convinced me there to draft Jerick McKinnon as well. But moving to a different position, also a guy who should be getting drafted a lot higher than he currently is. Amari Cooper of the Browns. He is currently the wide receiver 17 with an ADP of 43. So this man is going in the early 4th round as the wide receiver 1 with a DeSean Watson led offense. That's bullshit to me. That's a steal. Go pick up Amari Cooper. He posted the 11th highest target share last year on 2.11 yards per route run, which was the second best of his career. He is on the ascending Browns offense with a full season of DeSean Watson. Let's not forget, DeSean Watson didn't play football for almost 2 years it was.
Oh, yeah.
So now that DeSean's back in the swing of things, he gets a full offseason with all of his guys. I think you're going to see a bigger, deeper connection between him and the receiving core. And not to mention, Amari Cooper is literally the only receiver there. I mean, they just picked up Elijah Moore, but Amari Cooper's got that whole receiving room to himself, basically.
Yeah. I mean, Amari Cooper definitely a receiver 1 over there. I mean, he was finished as the receiver 8 through the first 12 weeks of last season. I mean, if you can get that guy in the late 4th to 5th round, that's a must draft. But the next guy I'm looking at, and I know this might be a little bit of a take because he's always hyped up every year, but Cam Akers, this guy, we've been writing him off for a while now. He's going as the RB22 with an ADP of 62.8, which puts him in the 6th or 7th round. And if you can get a bell cow guy in the 6th or 7th round, I think that might be a steal no matter who it is. And I know we've tried to hype up Cam Akers over the last couple of years, but this guy finishes the RB4 in the final 6 weeks of last season. He might be a league winner this year. I mean, last year, I guess he was a league winner because he finished as the 4th running back in the final 6 weeks. He led the NFL in yards in that 6 weeks period. Without Matt Stafford or Cooper Kupp last year, he was asked to step up, and he completely delivered. This year for the Rams backfield, it's really Cam Akers or bust. They have nobody else. I don't think Sony Michel is going to be competing for touches over Cam Akers. So I think if you can get this guy in the 7th round, what's the risk of taking a guy that has the lead role in his backfield in the 7th round? There's really no risk there, especially since with the final 6 weeks of last season, we saw what he's capable of. If he can just replicate that, this guy's going to be a league winner.
I could definitely see that. Hopefully he can stay healthy and that previous injury does not come to haunt him this year. But kind of staying on that similar wavelength, Travis, I really like a guy by the name of Rashad White. Now, unfortunately, I'm sure everyone has seen the clip, but he brutally stiff-armed Quandre Diggs of my Seahawks last year, and I've seen that clip one too many times. But Rashad White has currently an ADP of 65. He's currently the RB25, so getting this guy in the 6th, 7th round is absolutely absurd. Again, kind of similar to what you're saying with Cam Akers. Rashad White almost has the backfield to himself. I don't really know any of those other guys down in the backfield because Fournette has left, so there's no more Leonard Fournette there to take carries away from Rashad White. Rashad White has a passing upside, and he's only 24 years old. So I see so much upside for Rashad White, especially in your PPR leagues. So keep an eye out for Rashad White. And yeah, I'm going to be drafting a lot of him this year.
Yeah, and a guy that I'm going to be drafting a lot of is Deontay Johnson. Now, George Pickens has gotten a lot of hype over last year, over the last season, over this season. you gotta put the hype to the side when you're looking at these guys for fantasy football. This guy's currently going as the wide receiver 31 and an ADP of 76.3. But last season he ranked 5th in total targets through the last 3 seasons. He did have a disappointing fantasy season last year, but the volume was there. He's not going to get 147 targets this season where he got 0 touchdowns. That's not going to happen. That was a fluke season. This guy has the 10th highest target share in the league at 26.8. The hype of George Pickens is making him fall, but Deontay Johnson is always still going to be the receiver 1 there in Pittsburgh. You're getting an improved Kenny Pickett in his sophomore year. I don't see why Deontay Johnson isn't getting more hype. This guy completely controls the targets down in Pittsburgh. You're getting an improved Kenny Pickett. I don't see why he's falling in drafts.
Yeah, that is actually beyond me as well. I like Deontay Johnson a lot, so listen to Trav on that one. But next up for myself, I got a guy who just actually recently became a much higher valued guy here, Alexander Madison. Now, a couple weeks ago, before the Vikings had released Dalvin Cook, I would have never drafted Alexander Madison. But now that he has the backfield to himself, I'm loving it. He's at an ADP of 54, so 5th, 6th round type of guy. He's the RB22, right ahead of Rashad White. But again, he's got the backfield to himself. There's no more Dalvin Cook. So Alexander Madison is going to be getting not only all the carries and rushing attempts, he might be getting targeted out of the backfield as well. So he's got the passing upside, and not to mention, he's always looked explosive. I've always been a big fan of Alexander Madison. Yeah. Whenever he touched the field, he looked to be like a pretty good prospect, but he's never had the shot to be that true RB1. So Alexander Madison is going to be an absolute steal for me and potentially another one of those league-winning running backs that we've been talking about.
Yeah, definitely. We've seen what Alexander Madison can do when Dalvin Cook goes down, because Dalvin Cook always goes down once or twice a year. And we see this guy continuing when Dalvin Cook is not in the picture to put up 18-plus points. I feel like you already know what he can do. So drafting him in that late is just all reward at that point.
I agree.
But this is my favorite receiver this year, late in drafts. I think the biggest secret at the receiver position this year is Jahan Dotson.
No shot. That's wild. All right, let me hear it.
He's going as the receiver 36 with an ADP of 93.8, which means you can get him in the 10th round.
Wow.
I believe he's very resemblant of like a Christian Kirk from last year. This guy, everyone's writing him off. He had a little bit of injury problems in his rookie year, but he's a young guy. I don't think you can really look at injuries on a standpoint of his age in fantasy football. It's just like it's all luck at that point. If like you can't be looking at injuries. But he scored 18 plus fantasy points in 2 of his first games as a rookie before getting injured. And let's not forget he returned later that season. From week 3 on, he finished as a wide receiver 17. And yeah, wide receiver 17, you're like, well, that's not impressive. I'm looking for a top 10 steal. Well, this guy's going as the wide receiver 36. So if you can jump 20 spots, I think that's a must draft.
I would agree.
You know, he's on a lackluster offense, and people are concerned about him being the receiver 2. But let's not forget, in that stretch when Jahan Dotson played, he had a higher target share, more yards per reception, and more touchdowns, despite playing 5 less games than Terry McLaurin.
Wow.
This guy is definitely a receiver that has the capability to outperform his receiver 1. I know a lot of defenses are going to be honed on Terry McLaurin, but let's not forget, this guy's a stud. He's a playmaker. And if I'm drafting a guy at the wide receiver 36 position with an ADP in the 10th round, I'm just hoping that he's a starter on my fantasy team, and this guy is going to prove to be that this year.
I don't mind that at all. And actually, again, you kind of convinced me. Maybe I'm going to start drafting Jahan Dotson now. We'll see. With my next best kept secret in fantasy football this year, maybe a little bit biased because I am a Seahawks fan, but Jackson Smith-Njigba, are you kidding me? I mean, he was the number 1 receiver from this draft class. He's currently getting drafted in the late 8th, early 9th round as the wide receiver 38. But oh my gosh, the ceiling is so high for Jackson Smith-Njigba. I know some people can be a little nervous regarding, there's a lot of receivers. There's a lot of target share to be had over there in the Seahawks offense. But I really like the way Jackson Smith-Njigba plays. You saw him at Ohio State. There were also 2 monsters over there on that Ohio State team. So I think Jackson Smith-Njigba, regardless of who he's playing alongside with at the receiver position, I think he's going to be getting his fair share of targets and receptions. And honestly, I think he'll finish as the receiver 1 on the Seattle Seahawks. Would not put it past him whatsoever.
Yeah, he's definitely has the capability to do that when he's put in there in that slot position, which is the most used receiver position in fantasy football.
This is also true.
You got guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown, guys like Christian Kirk who are in that slot position. Not big name receivers outside of fantasy football, but when you look at it, these guys are studs because they're across the middle of the field. They're your check down receivers. These are the guys that are going to get you 10 receptions a game, easy 10 points in PPR.
Yeah, and I want to just touch one more part on Jackson Smith-Njigba. I think he would have been drafted a lot higher if it wasn't for his hamstring injury in his junior year. Kind of reminds me of what happened with DK Metcalf with his injury and DK falling to the 3rd round. I guess Seattle knows what they're doing when they're drafted these ex-hurt receivers. So I like it. Draft me some Jackson Smith-Njigba, baby.
Yeah, the next secret that I think that is trying to be kept, and this one might be the biggest jump fantasy-wise, is Anthony Richardson.
Wow, okay.
Now, if we just look at the last 3 seasons, there's always one quarterback every season, one rookie guy, one unknown guy that completely outperforms his ADP, and it's always the athletic quarterback from the draft before. Look at 2 years ago. That was Jalen Hurts. Completely outperformed his ADP. What was his style of build? Kind of like Anthony Richardson. Who was last year's? Justin Fields. Another athletic quarterback in the draft previous. These guys, athletic quarterbacks, are not just a quarterback, but they can give you quarterback and running back points in one player. He's currently going as the quarterback 15 with an ADP of 118.3. I think that this guy has a cannon. We saw him in college. He's improvising. I remember, most of you guys remember his highlight where he spun out of a tackle, threw it to the end zone to a wide open receiver. This guy has the capability to do it. And let's not forget, his Colts team has the capability to keep him in games late, which means he's going to have meaningful yards, meaningful touchdowns that he's going to need to score. It's not going to be like he's on Chicago, or not going to be like he's on Houston where he's kind of like you're losing by 20 within the 3rd quarter. This guy has a good O-line. Let's not forget Quentin Nelson. He has a solid running back that's going to take the load. They might load the box, make him more capable for RPOs and stuff like that. This guy has the talent around him, and I think he's going to be this year's athletic quarterback that's going to perform as a top 10 quarterback this season.
I could see Anthony Richardson being an absolute league winner. Now, maybe I wouldn't draft him as my starting quarterback right away, but definitely a backup quarterback. And just see the first few weeks how they go for Anthony Richardson. But I agree. I see the upside with Anthony Richardson as well. But I'm going to stay on that wavelength. I'm going to throw in a little QB in here as well.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of touch on his counterpart with Amari Cooper, but DeSean Watson, guys, currently getting drafted as an ADP of 79, so kind of in the 7th, 8th round there. He's the QB 9, right? So you can wait. You can let all these guys draft Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, whoever you want. And you can be getting drafting receivers and running backs that whole time and wait for DeSean to fall right into your lap. Let's not forget, DeSean has a pretty decent receiving core. I mean, obviously Amari Cooper is good. Elijah Moore is a new addition, and Donovan Peoples-Jones actually had a pretty decent fantasy year last year. So I'd be looking forward to see all those guys get their looks there. But finally, DeSean Watson has a full offseason with the team, and he actually got to play a little bit of football for the first time in 2 years. Kind of touched on that earlier. But with that, I think DeSean will have the capability to build back a lot of the confidence that he may have lost over those years. And, he was dealing with some big things behind the scenes and whatnot, but also building that chemistry with his teammates after not playing. Overall, I think there's a ton of upside with DeSean Watson. I mean, you saw how good of a player he was when he was on the Texans, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. So what's not to say he can't go back to that old version of DeSean Watson? I think he can.
Yeah, and this is definitely a different scenario here. A lot of the times where we're talking about, we're trying to go back to his old self, we're talking about guys who are 38, 39 years old.
Right.
This guy is a young quarterback. He has the rushing upside that you would like when you're trying to wait and draft a quarterback later, not trying to hit on one of those top guys. But pairing up DeSean Watson with a guy like Anthony Richardson, maybe that's two risky picks there, and you might want to go one safe guy, one risky guy, but I can see DeSean Watson finishing as a top 5 quarterback. We've already seen that in previous years. He's only 2 years removed from seasons like that. And in the previous 2 seasons, he didn't even play football. So we can't even say that he fell off playing wise, because he only played 4 to 5 games last season. So let's see how he does with the full team. And I think these guys, your 10 secrets in fantasy football, are going to win you leagues. So I think you should definitely keep an eye on all these guys. Maybe you can't draft all of them because, 10 picks. It's going to be hard to draft every single one. But if you like what we said about one of these guys are going to be league winners. I would look out for any of these guys. They're going to outperform their current ADP, and you're going to want to draft these guys later in rounds.
Yeah, well, guys, thank you so much for watching the video. If you enjoyed and you agree with some of our picks, go drop a subscribe. Go drop a like, go drop a comment. Let us know if we absolutely flopped on some of these biggest secrets or whether you agree and you think that these guys are actually going to be league winners this year.
100%.
Let us know down in the comments. Thank you for watching. And Trav?
And let us know, we want to know. I'm sure you guys are some fantasy champions out there. I want you to drop down in the comments who you think will be a league winner this year. Help us out as well. But as always, cue that outro, baby.
Peace.